Happy Friday and welcome to a new episode of BrainScratch. I'm John Lordan. Thank you so much for joining me here today. This episode's going to be a little bit different because basically we have updates from two cases we've covered previously, but we covered them on Searchlight. And because of the updates, these cases have now officially moved into BrainScratch territory. One of them seems to be on the road to justice, but possibly without a body being found. The other might be pointing to an even more difficult path, if you can believe that. Today, I'm going to bring you up to speed on both original cases before we dive into the latest research and try to figure out exactly why Christopher Miller and Morgan Bauer will never be coming home alive. 27-year-old Christopher Miller's fiancée, Mallory Durst, helped us produce our Searchlight episode about his disappearance several months ago. She told me about a young father who had another baby on the way. Christopher loved the Chicago Bears, the Madden and Call of Duty video game franchises, and working on cars, especially his Mazda. But his life would seemingly take a dark detour in Janesville, Wisconsin on November 19th, 2022. Christopher was on his way home from hanging out with his family, heading back to Madison, Wisconsin, when Wisconsin state troopers would attempt a traffic stop somewhere around 2 a.m. They were on Interstate 3990 near Avalon Road, and after the attempted traffic stop, Miller took off. There was a pursuit until Miller crashed into a traffic light at an off-ramp, and that eventually disabled his car. He then exited the vehicle, and he fled on foot. The body cam footage of that moment has been released previously. Let's take a look at it again right now.
Driver, put your hands out of the car! Turn the car off! Turn the car off! Put your hands up! Put your hands up!
Christopher Miller was listed as a missing person based on his home address being in Madison, Wisconsin, which was actually about a 45-minute drive from the location of his actual disappearance. Obviously, that would be in a much different jurisdiction, and I was originally concerned that if he had some accident, how would his body be found when the investigating agency wasn't local? Christopher wasn't familiar with this area, and he just ran off into the dark on foot in freezing weather wearing a Nike sweat outfit, and that's it. So odds of an injury, an accident, possibly even hypothermia were relatively high in this situation. I also wondered if local law enforcement would even really put in a solid effort to try to help find Christopher, considering that he had just taken them on a high-speed chase and he fled. We've recently learned in the Kaylana Turner disappearance that law enforcement can sometimes not only be uninterested, but actually hinder missing person search efforts. Thankfully, despite some charges being filed against him, charges that I believe were later dropped, the Rock County Sheriff's Office, in collaboration with Wisconsin State Patrol and the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources, did search the area for Miller using fixed-wing airplanes, canines, drones, ATVs, and of course, personnel searching on foot. But that large-scale search effort didn't happen until 2 days later, and they couldn't find him. Now, this area is pretty much farmland scattered with some housing, but you would think that they had a good shot at finding him if they would have looked that night, especially with how much wide open area there is out there. If they could get a helicopter up with a FLIR camera, that might have been effective. But 2 days later, that's a whole different thing. I mean, what happens if he fled the area, if he got that far away? A lot of time has passed. But having all these different departments that are working on this case actually became a bit of an issue for his family. Just trying to get simple updates would put them into this game of, oh, that's not us, call them. And of course, on the other end, they would hear the same thing. Here is just one example that Christopher's mother, Tammy James, ran into.
My name is Tammy James. I'm calling because they're supposed to be doing a search for my son, Christopher Miller. I haven't had any updates. I haven't heard from anyone. I just wanted to know what is it. I need an update of what's going on.
We don't have any updates. I recommend you call Madison Police Department, since that is who is handling.
No, that's not what Deputy Cliff told me, and the other patrol, they didn't tell me that Madison was looking for him. They supposed to. I just called the sheriff's office. They said they gave me you guys' number. They can have him as a missing person, but they're not doing the search because he wasn't in Madison, Wisconsin. He was in Rock County.
Okay.
That was where he was last seen.
Well, if Madison Police needs assistance with the matter, they will get a hold of us, but we don't have any updates as of yet.
Who do I need to? Can I speak to someone else, please?
What, like another dispatcher or?
Supervisor, because they just gave me this number right here.
Dispatcher?
Someone that can give me some more information because I just got this number from the sheriff's office. He gave me the number that you are supposed to be conducting the search.
I'm not aware of any searches being taking place.
Okay.
Of course, with a missing man last seen by police, thoughts and theories about some foul play situation involving them swirled around. And maybe for good reason. A 911 call that came in that night describes a situation that looks like a trooper is wrestling someone on the ground.
Hey, State, this is Rock with a transfer. It's going to be at the 178 eastbound. I have a caller who advised that they saw a trooper's vehicle out there, and then they see them in the field, and they just were just checking to make sure that they were okay. But I have the caller on the line here.
Okay.
Yeah, hello?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, so it was kind of weird. I went by, saw a reflective vest to the back right rear of the vehicle, kind of out in the field about 20 feet, and it was close to the ground, almost like he was, I don't know, wrestling with somebody, but, it's dark, so I just thought maybe somebody should check on him.
Yeah, as far as we know, everything's okay out there. They were out in the field doing a search.
Okay.
But yeah, as far as we know, everything's okay, but I will check on them.
All right, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And that wasn't the only thing pointing to a strange situation happening out there. It was also reported that notes from the Rock County Sheriff's Office mentioned that Miller was in the custody of the State Patrol. RCSO would tell the press they weren't sure why their notes said that. Of course, the family and supporters held protests and kept awareness raised in the press and on social media. Christopher's mother, Tammy James, would tell the press, "My heart is just heavy. You never want to be in a position that you can't protect your child, and I'm just thinking, what happened?" She knew that he wasn't just hiding out from police when the holidays came and went without any sign of Christopher, who loved his mother's holiday cooking. And now we know that she was right. Let's take a look at the current articles on this case and see if we can get a better sense of what exactly is going on. So I know we've touched on some of the issues that the family had in terms of dealing with law enforcement around this, but I just wanted to highlight there's an article that came out May 19th, 2023 from the Wisconsin State Journal, and they really kind of did a deep dive into that aspect of this case. There's a few things that kind of stick out to me about this, so I just wanted to take a moment and highlight these. Since that night, holidays and birthdays have come and gone. Miller missed the birth of his fifth child. Frustrated by what they contend was an inadequate response by police, family members have led search parties through rural areas of Rock County. They've hired a private investigator, made media appearances, and staged protests. The family requested information on the case to learn as much as they could, including internal State Patrol dispatch audio and text messages. Of course, that's where some of those audio clips that we got came from. What they found only compounded their grief. The records show dispatchers appearing to get exasperated with the family's frequent requests for help. In texts on the phone of a State Patrol sergeant, someone said Miller's family should work on their grammar, and that the family should look for him in Chirac, a slang term for Chicago that suggests its level of gun violence is equal to that of Iraq. Chirac? Really, guys? Miller's family doesn't dispute his legal troubles. At the time of his disappearance, he had a warrant. When he ran from the State Patrol in November, he also had about 2.2 ounces of marijuana in his vehicle. I don't believe marijuana is legal in Wisconsin yet. It literally just became legal in Minnesota in August of 2023. But even with that being said, they're saying, yeah, 2.2 ounces, it's a bit, but it's not like he was moving a massive amount of marijuana here. And of course, that doesn't make him undeserving of efforts to find him. Especially, I just want to, it's hard because right now we're all looking outside and, the sun is shining and the grass is growing, things are blooming. But this took place back in November of 2022. And for anyone that lives in this part of the country, it's just the landscape completely changes. It's completely different. Everything can be covered in snow. Now, admittedly, we don't have quite that level of winter taking hold in November yet, but it does get cold. It gets really, really cold. And we know this guy is out there with just a Nike sweat outfit, and that's it. So him being away from his vehicle, not having any place to go, seeing the location, and it's just all this farmland. Like, I think there's a lot of concern that should be given to, is he going to be able to survive out there? Like, what does it take for someone to succumb to hypothermia in that type of situation? I really think that, I don't know. Let's continue with the information because I don't want to make my conclusion before I give you guys all the details. But it seems like we know the search efforts, like the really big search efforts, didn't really kick on until 2 days later. There was some other searches that happened before that, but we're talking about, a trooper going out, kind of walking the railroad tracks, not seeing him, some things like that. I don't know. It really stands out to me that if they could have gotten some air support at that time with infrared camera just to detect some heat signatures out there, they might have had a chance of finding him, a significant chance of finding him out there. But back to the article. Rock County Sheriff's Office Captain Mark Thompson, whose agency led the initial investigation into Miller's disappearance, said there is no bias against Miller or his family. He said that the concerted effort, the search for Miller, didn't begin until days after his disappearance because his disappearance happened over a weekend where the resources were thin. I don't know. Miscommunication. Rock County deputies arrived at the scene within minutes of Miller's escape and set up a perimeter to find him, but miscommunication between dispatchers and deputies about whether Miller ran to the south or west caused the perimeter to quickly get busted or compromised. So we are finding that there's some information here that there wasn't great communication happening, and it looked like the perimeter that they set up just wasn't solid because they heard two completely different directions for how he ran off. In a letter to Miller's family afterwards, State Patrol Superintendent Tim Carnahan assured them that the search continued that night and that deputies with Dane and Rock counties looked for Miller for 3 hours, including with a drone. But according to this publication, that wasn't true. Dane County deputies did not participate in the search at the scene, and a drone was not flown that night. And the perimeter search for Miller was broken down after an hour, according to State Patrol and Rock County documents. How do they know they didn't get a drone up? Because apparently for these official search drone flights, they actually have to call into the local regional airport and let them know there that, hey, we're going to be flying a drone around in this area. Apparently that phone call never happened. So they're pretty sure. And if I recall correctly, I think the family was really pushing for this. Hey, show us the drone footage. And I was saying in the previous coverage, like, just give them a couple snapshots and say, yeah, we have the drone up. Here's a few snapshots of it. So I know that was a bit of a point of contention. And now, we have a reporter that digs in and actually says, well, according to the information we're finding, that definitely didn't happen as well. It's troubling because, we look to these organizations to help protect us and take care of us. And admittedly, this is a tough situation. I already brought up Kay Alana's case, similar in that for some reason, in Kay Alana's case, it's even less understandable, but she has kind of been seen as a fugitive. And here we have Christopher running. So it's tough to have that type of layer added to a missing persons investigation like this. It just kind of throws things into a different direction, unfortunately. We do have a quote here that Mallory wrote, "He is more than just another black criminal like they paint him out to be. He deserves more than this. The police failed him, his whole family, and children. This shouldn't have happened. If Christopher was white, they would still be looking for him. The outrage would be tremendous. I just feel like they didn't care," said Tammy James. And that was the last blip of news for several months until this recent development. And of course, it's a development that no family wants to hear. Over at NBC 15, Rock County Sheriff's Office reports body of Christopher Miller found in home, which already opens up a bunch of questions for me. What the heck is going on with this case? The body found in a Rock County home over the weekend is that of Christopher Miller, who's been missing for nearly 9 months. The Dane County Medical Examiner's Office notified Miller's family that the body found in an abandoned home on South Creek Road is Miller. A statewide missing persons alert for Miller issued by the Madison Police Department was canceled. So what is the location is the first question I had. I have been talking to Mallory about this update as well. It was the very first question I sent her. How far? What are we talking about here? So if you remember from the original coverage, he was originally traveling north on 90. I'm going from my memory here. It's been a minute, but I believe he's traveling north on 90. He gets off at East Avalon Road, and on this side is where the traffic light is. I think it's right around this area where he hits it with his car, and it damages his car really badly. He then flips back onto the freeway heading south. And if I recall correctly, I think he gets somewhere about a mile south before he has to pull over. I think his tire's been completely shredded. The car just isn't going to take him any farther. So somewhere in this area is where he jumps out. What's interesting here is we do have like a housing tract here, and I don't recall seeing that from any of the earlier looks. So he might have gotten, I'm not sure if he might have been a little further south than this. But from there down, you can see, I mean, we're just talking open land, occasional houses kind of scattered around this, a way station that's down here. And ultimately, he's found here at this red dot. And this is part of why that communication, it's really unfortunate that they couldn't get that perimeter set up properly, because you tell him, oh, he ran south, oh, he ran west. He kind of did, but he primarily ran south. And if they were allocating a bunch of resources, you know, they might have thought that he knew the area and that he was going to try to get into these like more heavily populated areas. But based on what his family tells us, he is not familiar with this area at all. He goes tearing off in a direction. And honestly, look at where he winds up. This is 5 to 6 miles from where he left his car. That is a long distance. He would have only had a mile or two to run into this town. You know, if he went running off east, there wouldn't have been anything outside of occasional homes and buildings like that as well. But it seems clear to me this is a person that probably didn't know this area. How he gets down to this point is also a big question for his family. Mallory told me, she's like, according to people I'm talking about that live out there, or people I'm talking to that live out there, there are fences that he would have had to go across, barbed wire that he would have had to cross to do all this. Is it possible? I certainly think so. 5 or 6 miles for a guy. He was in shape. He was in pretty good shape. He could probably do that if he was just keeping up a decent clip, not even an all-out run, but just kind of a steady jog. That was probably an hour for him to go that far. If he was able to do that. If he wasn't able to keep up like a decent running pace, even if he was walking, he would have made that distance within 2 hours. So it's really, really a shame that we have this situation. Those first few hours would have been so critical. And you would kind of think, like, especially if you thought, oh, treat him like a fugitive at that point. You know, all hands on deck. We've got some guy that's running away from law enforcement time and time again. Let's pull out the resources. Let's bring this guy in. I just wish there was a different outcome for this story. But the other question is, he gets down to a house down in this area. What happens in the house? One of the primary things I'm concerned about is hypothermia. Is this guy's going to freeze to death if he's out there laying in a ditch in a farm somewhere? He actually gets to a building. Wouldn't there have been some way for him to keep himself warm, even in an abandoned house, maybe an old mattress that was around or items that might have been left behind, even without that, just being inside a home? And we're going to see some footage of the home. It's not a house that is abandoned and like the windows are blown out and it's, a little shack. It's a nice home where it looks like all those things are still intact. It's a really big question. Honestly, I'm just really unsure what's going on when it comes to cause of death, and we're going to find out. The family is unsure about that too, but let's not jump ahead of ourselves. Let's continue with the next article here. Here's a picture. You can't really see the house so much from here, but we'll get some better footage of it as we go forward. Now, how did they find out he was in the house? That's another thing that is really raising some big questions. It was by a tip. And I found information that came out just today that said it was actually an anonymous tip. Someone literally calls in and says, you're going to find his body in this house at this particular address. How would anybody know about that if this house is abandoned? And if it was a kind of what I would consider a natural discovery, like someone came by, the homeowner came by, a real estate agent came by because they were going to be putting it up on the market, like some type of thing that made sense about the discovery, they wouldn't need to call it in anonymously. They would just call law enforcement and be part of the story there. Why is someone going to call it in anonymously about this body being in that building? I don't know. The sheriff's office did not release many details about the individual's death, including how the person died or how long the body may have been there. According to the sheriff's office, they found the body Sunday afternoon following a tip that led them to an abandoned home in the town of Turtle. And when I say Sunday afternoon, that's literally this week, this past Sunday that I'm recording this. So this information is very new, and unfortunately because of that, there's not a ton of detail. Sheriff's office cruisers were seen parked at a home in the 8300 block of South Creek Road, which runs along Turtle Creek. One woman who drove by recalled seeing an official in a hazmat suit. She said, I just found it really unusual because of the neighborhood. We're kind of that rural, just outside the city area. It's unusual for any police presence in general. Of course, we get his family commenting. His father, Christopher Miller Sr., said that the cause of death was still under investigation. And he confirms, we were told that an anonymous tip came in Sunday about a body being found. They called us Monday morning to let us know that my son was found in a home dead. The fight isn't over. We've been waiting for 9 months for answers. We want to know the cause of death. That is certainly the big question at this point, especially knowing that he got to a home. I think that would mitigate some of those risks that I was worried about, but somehow we still lose him. Let's hear a quick clip from his mother.
He didn't just walk that far and go to that house and sat there for almost 9 months and just died. It's too far of a distance with no coat, just a jogging suit in that weather, those fields. I just don't see it.
She's making some really good points. It is just a very strange turn for this. And here's another shot of the house. I can't tell from this shot. It looks like the roll-up garage door is kind of lifted a bit. That could have been how he got in. I'm not sure. But like I said, like all the windows are in place. This house does not look like it's in terrible shape. And we also don't know if anything was inside. On one of those shots, there's kind of a close-up on one of the windows, but all we can really tell is that the blinds are still in place. I don't know. There's a chance that house could be full of stuff, which would actually raise this question even more about what happened. What happened there? Continuing at channel3000.com, another really weird twist in this case, and I've been seeing this a lot with cases lately where for some reason the press is able to get access to information that the family doesn't have. I don't know how that's happening time and time again, and why information that's been given to the press, where honestly all that information could be disseminated and released, why that information wouldn't be given to the family. But here we are again. The Rock County Sheriff's Office released a 14-page timeline that provides a detailed description of its efforts to find Miller. It also showcases growing frustrations between Miller's family and law enforcement about the lack of answers in the case, which, is that so hard to understand? It's just another thing that kind of gets me. Like I've kind of taken this on. I think anyone that's in law enforcement has also taken this on. You're going to be dealing with people that are not being the best versions of themselves because they're going through something extremely traumatic. And that, with missing persons cases, is just, it's part of it. I'm just kind of blown away time and time again by law enforcement. I don't know if they don't have the resources, don't have the training. Like, can there be some kind of program put together to help give them the tools to help families in these situations? Like, ultimately, that's what the families are looking for. They're looking for help. And we just kind of keep coming back to these types of stories where it's like, oh, there's growing frustration between law enforcement and the family. Shouldn't law enforcement have experienced this type of thing before and be able to kind of help with those mounting frustrations? Kind of like give the family a heads up. I mean, every family I talk to, I see the same pattern. First 30 to 45 days, if they get enough initial help, after the first month or two, it kind of goes away and then the frustration level starts. Like, isn't there someone that can figure out, like, hey, we need a communication method? Like, give law enforcement a workflow. Give them some type of program that sends a prompt and says, hey, by the way, detective, it's been 2 weeks since you've reached out to this family. It's time to contact them again, even if you don't have an update, and here's what you can say to them. Like, just some type of care program of some kind. I mean, and I know, like, hey, look, we expect law enforcement to do a lot and to really be like a Swiss Army knife, just multiple utility in multiple situations. But that's why I think it needs to be some type of system, some other thing that enables them, that helps them with these types of situations. But I don't know. Yeah, just dreaming maybe that's the thing that I'm supposed to help develop. I don't know. Back to the information. So, growing frustrations. A News 3 Now review of the document found law enforcement agencies conducted searches on 13 separate days between when he went missing and when his body was found. The family obviously requested more, and a lot more from what I understand. During the November 22nd search, law enforcement found black fabric fibers on a fence near where his vehicle was located. And outside of that, the timeline doesn't provide details of any other evidence being found. If I recall correctly, I think we mentioned those black fibers in the original coverage on this, which is interesting because I don't know the location of that fence, but that might have helped in terms of understanding the direction that he had traveled. And I'd bet it's pretty much a straight shot south from where his car was. Inclement weather canceled multiple planned search efforts. Unfortunately, that just does happen out here. Miller's family requested more than a half dozen additional searches. That did not happen. When 2 searches were conducted in early April, James, his mother, reportedly voiced concerns that she had not been told about them until after they were finished. The sheriff's office said that the canine search group aiding those searches, Canine Search Solutions, had previously requested that family members not be present while the dogs were working. There might be technical explanations for that. It might be something to do with how the canines are being handled and their ability to do their work. So, I think we could give some level of understanding to that. In June, the sheriff's office and James agreed to set a meeting for July 13th. That meeting was postponed days before it was set to take place, following concerns that people outside of Miller's family were slated to attend. I actually asked Mallory about this. She said there was only one person that wasn't a family member that they were planning on bringing to the meeting. And that basically she was told that, hey, we want to make sure we got enough chairs for you guys. Can you send us a list of who's coming to that meeting? So the information was passed to law enforcement under no pretense of, hey, we need to vet this. We need to make sure they're all family. And even outside of that, there was no previous discussion saying you can't have someone that's outside the family come here. So I don't know. How does this happen? Why? What's the benefit? And then, further, on July 21st, Richard Greenlee from the Rock County Corporation Council, which provides legal services to county officials, sent James a letter saying any future correspondence between the family and the sheriff's office would be routed through his office. So they are now putting a lawyer between in the communication. How about we put a therapist or some third party that can help facilitate better communication, a mediator? Chris's fiance, Mallory, has been in touch with me again today. She also doesn't understand how a tip would be called in about his body being there. She tells me that neighbors didn't even know the house was abandoned because the lawns were being kept up. And despite the fact that the autopsy has been completed, I did find at least one news source saying they know the autopsy is done, the family still hasn't been told the cause of death. They're being told that they are now awaiting toxicology results. And those are results that could take months. Now, typically in cases, I only see that be a factor if there isn't obvious trauma that makes it very clear what the cause of death is. But I have seen in some other cases where they sometimes wait for toxicology results to add as a contributing factor to a death. So I don't know what we're looking at with this situation. It's too hard to tell, but to know that this family is now up for more waiting after they've been through so much already. Mallory also tells me that she did give birth to her and Christopher's baby several months ago, and she named her new daughter Krishan in memory of Christopher. Obviously, we are nowhere near the end of this, and I know Christopher's family will continue to fight for answers. Please show them all the support you can. I've got some links in the description box below, and I'll be sure to keep you updated as we learn more on this case. Let's get to our second case update for today. That is the case of Morgan Bauer. Now, Morgan Bauer grew up in Aberdeen, South Dakota, but at the age of 19, she was looking for more than she felt she could find in her hometown. She wanted to live in a big city. Described as a free spirit who commanded any room she entered, Morgan's mother, Sherry, described her as charismatic with a gentle heart. And in February of 2016, Morgan was finally ready to make her dreams come true. She packed up her belongings and left Aberdeen. With only $20 in cash that she borrowed from a friend, Morgan caught a ride with another friend to Minnesota, where she then caught a flight to Atlanta, Georgia. Her mother wasn't sure why she decided on Atlanta, but she did her best to support Morgan's decision. Sherry was told that Morgan would be rooming with two other roommates in their own home when she arrived there, but in fact, Morgan had found a man on Craigslist that agreed to let her stay at his home. The agreement was that she could stay there rent-free if she would clean the house and do chores until she found her own job, saved up enough money, and moved out on her own. But, as we see far too often in these cases, those plans would not come to pass. The second day Morgan was in town, her living arrangement took a dramatic turn. When she came back after job hunting, she found all of her possessions outside of the house with a note that said, "Don't come back." Her mother said Morgan panicked. She only had the $20 that she had taken with her, although she was expecting some more money to come in soon. Her taxes had been filed, and with her return, that was going to be loaded onto her H&R Block card. We're not exactly sure how, but it seems that Morgan was able to find a hotel room, or at least she told her best friend that she would be staying at a hotel room. The conflicting stories only get started there. Sherry has said that on the night of the 25th, Morgan was dancing at a strip club called Top in Gainesville, which is just over an hour away from Atlanta. Earlier that day, she had applied at another club called Tease, and that was in Atlanta. She said in her posts on social media that she had been hired. However, both businesses deny that she ever worked there. The owners stated that Morgan didn't have the proper paperwork to be a dancer in Georgia. However, there is a big wrinkle in that story. I looked into it, and in order to be not only an exotic dancer in the state of Georgia, but to even work in an adult entertainment club at all, you must first purchase an adult entertainment permit. That goes for the owner, bartenders, DJs, security, even the dishwashers. Now, she obviously didn't have one. However, the Atlanta Police Department states that you need to get hired before submitting your application for that permit. The permits are issued not only per person, but also per establishment, so it wouldn't make sense for you to file for one if you didn't have a job at that place. It's also been reported that when Morgan applied for a job at Tees, she applied with a coworker from Top. The coworker said that Morgan offered to buy her adult entertainment license as well. Was Morgan planning to purchase her and her friend's permit with her tax return? It's possible. We can't find any public information confirming if that money ever came in or if it was ever accessed. Now, at that time, everyone thought that February 25th, 2016 was the last night that Morgan was in contact with her family or friends and the last day that she had posted to any of her social media. On March 12th, her mother filed a missing persons report with Atlanta police. Investigators took over and found that her phone last pinged in the Yellow River Park in Porterdale on the 27th of February. The unnamed coworker that she was going to buy the pass for also lived in this area in Porterdale. When the coworker and her boyfriend were questioned, they stated that on the 27th, they took Morgan to a Citgo gas station a short distance away in Covington. They both said she got into a green Mitsubishi Eclipse car with an unknown male. They drove off, and they never saw her again. Investigators also found some disturbing posts from the coworker that correspond to the time that Morgan disappeared. In one post on Facebook, the woman tags her boyfriend with a meme that says, "Bob likes to kill, Bob kills for fun." Since Morgan's disappearance, that couple separated and now live in two different states. Investigators couldn't find any direct evidence of foul play in her disappearance at that time, but it appears they have found something now. Let's go ahead and get back to the internet sources and see what we can find out about Morgan's case and how it might still be related to this couple that she was last seen with. Here at 11 Alive, we see search warrants issued. Police said new information, which they would not specify, led to a search warrant for a property on South Broad Street, a new lead in the case surrounding Morgan Bauer. They did have a press conference. I watched the entire press conference. They were being very, very tight-lipped about this information, but they are saying it's a recent development. Basically, there's something that has come their way that led to, okay, we finally have this information. We need to act on this at this point. And that led them to searching this property. One other thing that they did say in the press conference is that the search warrant covered the land and the property that was on the land. So most of the footage that I've seen is actually them working outside. I am also seeing some dogs. I don't know if those are cadaver dogs that they're using, but there are some dogs that are part of this search as well. However, based on what they said in the press conference, I think there might have been some searches that went inside as well. Another thing that I've noticed about this footage is that house looks really, really nice and really, really big. And it's got a pool in the backyard. I'm just wondering, whose house is this? And how is this lead coming up? Why would anything related to what happened to Morgan, assuming something happened to her, which we're pretty sure of at this point, how is this house playing a part of it? It is kind of close to where she was last seen. Let's finish up this article and then we'll hit a map and take a look at that. They added that their search led to the location of items of evidentiary interest. Police noted that the property owners are cooperating with the investigation. So it seems like to me the property owners are not the suspects, but the suspects might have been given access to that property at some point. So she was last seen at the park, Yellow River Park here in Porterdale. And this property right down here. So very, very close to where that park is. As a matter of fact, well, if you've got the river kind of separating it, but you could just about get from that property to the park without even being on the road. Considering she's last seen here, they're searching in here somewhere. This big open stretch of river back here. Oh, there's a dog park. There's a bunch of woods and stuff. I would be looking all over this. I don't know I don't know if any other searches have been done back here yet, but I'd be kind of very interested in this. I don't know if it's private property or not. I wouldn't think so. They got 2 parks on this side. At the press conference, they did mention that several other jurisdictions are involved, including the FBI, which you can see all over that footage, the GBI, or the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, the Newton County Coroner, the Atlanta Police Department, and the Peoria Police Department from Illinois. Why would Peoria, Illinois, play into this? And even with the FBI's involvement here, knowing that the couple that she was last seen with don't live in this state anymore, are they going to play part of this? Porterdale police officer Michael Walden said, at this time, because it's still ongoing and things are developing in this case, we can't share any more at this time. We understand that incidents can cause concern among the residents. We want to assure the public that we're actively working to address the situation and maintain the safety and security of our community. Of course, with situations like this, I know Morgan's mom is probably sitting on pins and needles, just wondering where this is going to go from here. Here's a quote from her. They wouldn't have done all that work to get here if there wasn't a good reason for them to all show up yesterday, said Sherry Keenan. Everything seems surreal. Working with the FBI and the GBI, the Porterdale police scanned the Broad Street property for clues. They said they found items of evidentiary interest, but they wouldn't say what those items are. It's pretty clear at this point they did not find Morgan. Could they have found some remains? I don't know. It's a possibility. They are not releasing any information to support anything like that, but they're saying they found something. A sergeant for the department said on Friday that the search warrants have to go back to the judge before they can talk about any details of them. And honestly, this information's from a few weeks ago. These details are still not coming out. So Morgan's mother also said that she needs people to keep caring, keep sharing, and keep talking about Morgan, because we really need to keep getting her story out there right now, which of course we're doing here. It seems like they've got some pieces of this puzzle, but of course they might need more. Let's go ahead and hear a quick word from her about someone else that she's concerned with in all this.
To the family that lives at that house, to the parents of the people that live in that house, that I'm so sorry. And they must love their child as much as I love mine.
Well, I think we just figured out how the house is connected. Seems to me that the house is probably owned by the parents of the person that's being investigated. Let's see if we can find some other details to try to bring that into focus just a little bit more. While not a lot of more detail has come out, we do have police make a pretty bold statement just a little over a week ago. Police say that Atlanta woman who vanished in 2016 is dead, and 2 arrests are made in connection to her disappearance. Porterdale police announced that Jonathan Alexander Warren was arrested in Los Angeles and charged with murder, aggravated assault, concealing a death, and tampering with evidence, all of them felonies. Additionally, Caitlin Goebel was arrested and charged with concealing a death and tampering with evidence. She was taken into custody in Peoria, Illinois. So we now find the connection to Peoria. And it's interesting to me that we have so many charges aimed at Jonathan, including the most serious murder and aggravated assault. We don't have those same charges aimed at Caitlin. And as far as we know, Morgan's body has not been found. So it's just got me wondering if possibly Caitlin had spoken to someone around her hometown, and somehow that information got back, and that's what pulled this all together. I don't know. That's purely me just thinking about the possibilities and what's happening with this case. And I don't know, because in the original coverage, we don't know the couple's name. I don't know that this is the couple that she was hanging out with, the ones that supposedly took her to Citgo. We'll see if we can find that as we continue here. But let's finish this article. Newton County District Attorney Randy McGinley said I always look at it from the victim's perspective, or in this case, the victim's family. This family's been waiting for years, not knowing what has happened, and my hope is that this investigation and this case will lead to them having some closure. Police say they now believe that Bauer was killed and her body was dumped. And this is one of the 2 mugshots, but the only one that's been released publicly. We don't have the mugshots for Jonathan Alexander Warren. This is Caitlin Goebel with the arrest that happened, I believe, in Peoria. And of course, now we have them in separate states. There's a whole process that has to happen with them being extradited and brought back to Georgia to face these charges. And that's what we get into at this next article. Continuing with Randy McGinley, the county district attorney. The first thing to get done is getting them extradited back to Georgia. Once they're here, they'll be booked on those charges. And within about 48 hours, there's a first appearance hearing. So by the time that happens, I would imagine more detail is going to come out. McGinley said he cannot share how Warren and Goebel knew Bauer or ended up in different states. I think that first appearance hearing is going to open up some more information for us, but I'm not finding any information on that hearing happening yet. GBI back at Porterdale home after couple's arrest. So they arrest the couple, they go back to that house, and they're searching again, searching even more. It's not clear what they're looking for, obviously. And then we have a quote here from someone named Casey McClure. She actually runs an organization that provides outreach to exploited women, and she has helped in this search since it began. She says it all goes back to the couple that was last seen with Morgan. So we pretty much have it confirmed. The people that gave the story about the green Mitsubishi Eclipse, that's probably completely fictionalized. Even kind of looking at a map of where she was actually last seen, being at the park, that being close to this home that's being searched, and then them talking about this Citgo that was miles and miles away, kind of on the other end of town. I don't know if that location really has anything to do with this case at all. Another quote from McClure: "We don't know if it's Morgan or if it's something else that they've covered. We're not really sharing that information publicly. And of course, Morgan is still considered a missing person." I believe she's talking about the new search efforts that are going on at the house. She said that they have actually spoken directly to the suspects. And by they, I mean her and her team that has been working trying to find Morgan. This is her quote. "They said, 'Hey, there was a couple that was hanging out with your daughter, and we went to the club and had an interaction with this couple.' She said that the last time that Morgan was seen alive was with Warren and Goebel. Caitlin was very sweet and polite and well-mannered and seemed concerned about Morgan, and Alex Warren was very rigid." So that's the information that they got from actually talking to those 2 people directly. Or maybe not information, but I should say more the impression that they got. The city of Porterdale has been sharing just a little bit of information. Actually, a lot of the footage we showed you in this came from them, but they're also noting here they're continuing the investigation. Chief Cripps would like to thank the news media and the public for their support. Investigators are in constant communication with the DA in his office. I'm sure that's absolutely true. And we get just another confirmation here at WSBradio.com. Loved ones are reacting to 2 arrests made that have shifted a missing persons case to a murder case. Morgan's friend, Paxton Gilbert, said, "It's a big shock. I just want to know what happened, you know. They told investigators, they even told her mom that they dropped her off at a gas station, and that's the last that they saw of her." So just another confirmation from her friend that this is indeed that couple that was last seen with Morgan, and she's in the same boat I am, just questioning that last story. As for Morgan's mother, Sherry, she did make a post. Just such a very well-spoken woman, and she's really been riding this line in terms of this case the whole time of trying to be as helpful as possible to it and being as respectful to law enforcement. It's It's unique because coming off of Christopher's case and talking about a point where family and law enforcement hits tensions, with this case, it's been a little bit different for Sherry. I think there's a different experience that's been happening in this case. Does that kind of support Christopher's family in terms of their assumptions about that case? Possibly. But here's what Sherry's saying. Good morning, everyone. I'm gratefully opening this group back up so we're able to hold space for one another as Morgan Bauer's case continues to unfold. This is a safe space to share your hopes, memories, prayers, and love for Morgan as well as other missing persons. What we cannot share is speculation. Please understand legally and currently Morgan is still considered a missing person. While we are so grateful that arrests have been made, this is an ongoing investigation. We must move moment by moment. We are being gently guided by law enforcement and are awaiting updates regarding the items of evidentiary value found. Thank you for protecting me and Morgan throughout this journey, and thank you for protecting her and her case now. Obviously, very big steps happening in Morgan's case, but we don't have Morgan being found that's been reported yet, and quite honestly, we don't know what they did find that led to all this. I can't even find confirmation that the couple has been brought back to Georgia yet, or if that initial court date actually happened. So we should get some new wave of information when all of that occurs, and of course, I'll keep an eye on it and let you know of the significant developments. I really do hope that investigators find the pieces they need to bring Morgan back home to Sherry. I know she's been waiting for that for a long time now. Since 2015, we've always run limited commercial ads for the benefit of the viewers and the families that we're trying to help. Obviously, we can't do that without support. A big thank you to all of our patrons and all of our PayPal supporters. If you'd like to become one, please visit LordanArts.com. There you can sign up for Patreon, sign up for PayPal, buy merchandise, or even just buy us a coffee like Danny recently did. We really appreciate your support on our mission to run as few ads as possible and help as many cases as we can. Quick announcement. Next week will be our final episode of LordanArts Uncovered, and it is one of the most unbelievable cases I've ever looked into. Be sure to catch that final episode with Andrea, Dana, and myself looking into the disappearance of Brittany Wood. What show is going to replace LordanArts Uncovered? Stay tuned to the channel and you will find out very soon. Have a nice weekend, everyone, and I'll see you here again on the LordanArts channel.